right, guys, welcome back to the Truth Seekers podcast, where we look for truth in every single way possible out there. In this episode, we are going to be talking about how can we look for the next step, because we're always trying to look for that next step in our lives. And sometimes we don't even know what the next step we should be taking is, or if the step we're taking right now is the right step. But it's very confusing sometimes. And I know everyone feels this way. Like, you don't know, you're uncertain about the times and if you should take the next step or what is the next step. And it's hard to tell sometimes. And I hope we can actually get to some sense making in this, where we can come to some ideal way to figure out what way to take the next step is. And on this episode, I have my dad with me. He is a big, advocate of taking the next step. He moved to Honduras from the US, which is fantastic. And I think that was a huge move for him and for my whole family. So taking that step is definitely a big thing in my family.
I think an interesting thing is, when you say, what should we do or what should we do in life? There's a real generic answer, which is all you can in Jesus Christ, who gives us strength. And that's a very simple thing. Obviously, that applies to everything that is before us. There's a little bit more difficult answer, which is make the world a better place for those around you and those that come after you.
Right. And I was actually thinking about that this afternoon when I was trying to write notes down for this podcast. It's really hard to think about what should be our next step, and just thinking about other people and trying to put them into the circumstances and trying to make a better life for them in the future, or trying to make a better life for them for in the present, because we're not really sure what they want in their lives. So we can't really plan for things that are unknown.
Right. And if we can remain humble in all of this, it'll work better. Because one of the things that we, as you were mentioning, we have difficulty with, we don't always know the best way to make the world a better place. We don't always recognize that some of our efforts to make the world a better place may actually be doing the exact opposite. And so we have to be very careful in what we do and be able to reanalyze what we're doing and seeing if we need to change something. Sometimes, we justify what we're doing because everyone's doing it. Throw garbage out the window of your vehicle as you're driving down the road. Well, everyone does it. I can see the garbage alongside the road, but we're not really making the world a better place. And we really shouldn't justify what we do by what other people do. We should always just be trying to make the world a better place in the perspective of where we're able to. And so that means we stop doing things that we recognize as probably not good things to do.
Right, because I bet even Hitler, when he was killing all the Nazis, I bet he thought he was making the world a better place. But guess what? He was causing mayhem wherever he went, pretty much, which isn't making the world a better place. And he thought he was. So how can we actually move ourselves to the point where we are actually making a better place in the world?
I think a good way to start is to take stock of what's around us. We just look at the world, we analyze where we are. Obviously, I like what Jordan Peterson says. He starts with something very simple like make your bed or clean your room. In other words, taking stock of your immediate environment and asking yourself, okay, right here where I am in my immediate environment, first off, what does it look like? Where am I? How are things? And how can I make it just a little bit better? And then we slowly move out in concentric circles until our home, our community, our church. We take stock of what things look like first off, and then we analyze, okay, now what can I do to make this just a little bit better? Obviously, if I'm looking at my community and it's a rundown community, garbage all over the place, there's probably a lot of openings for making the world a better place. If we've got a pretty good community and it's pretty clean and people are pretty good people, then maybe I'll have to work harder to find what I can do to make it a better place. But the first thing is just to take stock of where we are.
So how do you think is the best way to take stock of where we are? Just like reading books, maybe?
Well, I think reading books helps because we always have to have the metrics of how to analyze. I mean, if we look at a white piece of paper, what makes us think it's white rather than gray or even black? And so we have a comparative mind in our head. We're always looking at two different things and comparing them. And so to make the world a better place, we have to have an idea of what a better place looks like. And of course, the scriptures give us example of some of that, especially when it starts talking about God's kingdom and the millennium, and it talks about a place, where there are no more tears, there are no more sadness, there's no more pain and suffering. And so that's already giving us certain direction in how to make the world a little bit better place.
So if we're trying to put it into the heavens perspective, like it always talks about the earth being heaven, and that gonna be like when Jesus comes. But how can we actually know what heaven is? And how can we find the right comparison? Because sure, we are in our own world, and I'm not sure how we can find that good in it so that we can execute that into a better. And I'm not sure how to make heaven without knowing what heaven is. That's what I'm trying to get to. How can you make heaven without knowing heaven?
Absolutely. And that's going to be a challenge that everyone's going to have. And we're all going to come to a different conclusion when we ask ourselves, what is heaven? A couple things I was thinking about. And one of those is the quote by Gandalf. When Gandalf is there in the elven kingdom of Rivendell, and he makes that comment, some believe it's only great powers that can hold evil in check. But that's not what I have found. I've found that it's the small everyday deeds of ordinary folk that keep the darkness at bay, small acts of kindness and love. And I think that that is a beginning, rather than sometimes we try to see this huge picture of heaven. And it's not that there isn't a heaven, so to speak, but sometimes what we need to do is we need to reduce it down to just a small thing. If I take my neighbor's garbage out for them, or if I mow my neighbor's lawn for them that they haven't had a chance to mow, or if my neighbor's an elderly person and I visit them and maybe go get groceries for them, I'm giving them a little piece of heaven in the kindness that I'm doing, in the love that I'm showing. Too often I look at, even some of the people that want to fix the world, climate change activists and whatnot. They've created these humongous goals that are so big that no one can ever accomplish them. And so because no one can accomplish them, no one does anything. All we do is sit around and talk about it. But if we make these goals small, which is, I think, kind of what Gandalf was getting to, these little acts of love and kindness, we are slowly creating heaven. And before we know it, a lifetime of small acts of love and kindness, and you're going to turn around, you're going to say, I'm in heaven. I'm there. I've got there. I didn't know when, I didn't know how, but I got there. This is it. This is the best place in the world to be. I'm surrounded by people I love and who love me. We look out for each other. We help each other. The only thing sometimes that you could imagine that would make it just a slight bit better, or maybe a lot better, is if Jesus himself was present. And you've arrived at heaven.
Right. And if everyone looked for that little thing and made that little thing, put that little thing into their lives that was good, it would be a better heaven, and it would be a better place if everyone did it, because it would be a total community effort, not a one person effort, which is harder to accomplish when one person is trying to take on a whole load instead of a whole group of people trying to take on a whole load.
One of the important things I think that we need to remember getting started in life, and for the life of me, it just slipped my mind, but there's a graph. There's a graph that's very important, that talks about how we perceive things as we're growing in knowledge. And there's like this spike when we're young and we think we know everything. And then as we really begin to learn things, you get this curve down. And then slowly, as we become professional, it curves back up again. And I think that's a good thing to acknowledge. No matter where we are, we probably don't know nearly enough that we need to know. But if we begin putting small pieces together, I think that we can shoot towards a good goal. In my own perspective, I think there's probably some puzzle pieces that we can put in that will slowly bring us to the heaven that we want, this better place, whether it's right now in my life, whether it's 10 years in my life, whether it's, for the eternity also. Sorry. I think there's four basic puzzle pieces that we can add in. One of those I call our tools, and they're the things that we need to use. Another one of those is our education, our learning, and another one of those is our personal well-being, our health, things of that nature. And of course, the last one, in my perspective, is the ability to recalibrate. We look at everything we've done, our efforts up to this point, and we double check. Because again, sometimes we can have the best intentions, the best desires, and do the wrong thing. And so we need to be able to recalibrate and say, wait a minute, this didn't work out how I thought it would. I'm not actually getting to the heaven I was shooting for. And so I need to re-examine my steps and see where I made a mistake.
Recalibrating is actually a really good idea, just because it happens everywhere in your life. Like, you make this plan of, and like in the beginning of the year, everyone makes plans of maybe going to the gym or writing in a journal every morning. But 1 month, 2 months down the line, you're not doing any longer. But that's not because you reached your goal, though. That's because you faded it. You weren't consistent with it, so you failed. Which I think that's another point in all this, which is consistency. You need to keep consistent in
Absolutely.
each taking that each step forward, because if you're not, you're never going to reach somewhere as well. But let's go back to tools. So what do you think, and how do you think what do you think are the best tools to use to make sure we can take that next step forward in the right manner and find that next step that we should be taking?
Well, one of the things that we have to always remember as humans, we have a tendency to think more about the flashy externalness of life, a sports car, a fancy house, or things of that nature that actually are not tools at all to help us get anywhere in the world that we really want. I mean, obviously, having a mansion, a castle, a Ferrari, they might give us a momentary happiness or something, but the reality is they don't help us help anybody. And so when I think about tools, I think about the things that help us help people and also help us help ourselves. I mean, you think about the best mechanic in this world. If he doesn't have any tools, you may show up with your car and want him to fix something, but he can't do anything about it because he doesn't have the tools to do it. And so in our life, we need to start examining what are tools. What's the smallest thing I can do? Mow my neighbor's yard, maybe. Well, I need a tool. I need a lawnmower. If I want to be able to buy groceries for an elderly neighbor who maybe can't go out on their own, well, how do I get to the grocery store? How do I get back? Do I need a bicycle, so to speak? And so as we begin looking around us and examining what are the things that I can do to help other people, well, I need tools. And so I start to, look for those tools that can help me accomplish something good in this world. And so, thinking about it on just a very simple level, if my neighborhood's a mess, maybe the tool I need is a garbage bag, and I can go out and pick up garbage. That makes the world just a little bit better. We don't always think about how much nicer that is, but if you've ever driven through different communities, and you've driven through one that was just a rundown mess and another that was nice and clean, it makes you feel different. And so if we can do those little changes, it helps our communities overall. And so, we go and we begin adding one by one these little tools as we're able to. Obviously, we can't do it all at once, but just little tools that help us reach out and help other people. And, that may be a vehicle, that may be, like wrenches, so to speak, depending on what level of tools we're looking for. It may be knowledge of the scripture. So because some of the tools we have are going to be spiritual tools. If someone's in depression, if someone needs to know, what's the right way to get married, or who knows what spiritual questions they may have, well, our tools may be knowledge. And that includes history and a lot of reading, like you mentioned earlier.
It takes a lot of reading and listening to other people, especially listening to other people, because you can learn so much from other people. And if you can talk to them and ask them questions, which would be getting it going, because if you can ask questions, you can ask those professionals about what they went through and their experiences. And this was another part of your thing, was the education part, because when you get educated, it's a pathway you go down. It's an experience. Without experience, you're not going to learn anything. You don't get educated. But then with the tools, putting it back in the tools, because all of these go together in a circle pretty much. They all come together at some point. And with the tools, the education, you can help so many people out there with your education, because even your kids, you're going to have kids in the future. You can homeschool them if you know enough. And you can make sure that they are not going down the wrong paths, like drugs, or maybe just hanging out too much with their friends, because some friends are bad influences. And that's not a good idea for your kids to be hanging out with people with bad influences, because if your kid is hanging out with someone that has a bad influence, they're going to be learning the bad traits of the other people. And that's not very good either. But it's hard to think about the tools in a mental sense, though, because you can't grab onto that tool. It's harder to hold on to. It's harder to find too.
Yeah, but there's another side of that that we have to remember also, and this is where there needs to be a balance in our life. And there's a scripture verse that comes to mind in regards to this, but we have to remember that most tools require maintenance. And so we can actually cripple ourselves if we're not careful. If my ambition is to have so many tools with the hope of being able to help people, eventually the maintenance of all of that becomes such a burden, I end up not helping anyone. And this even includes in the learning aspect of it. There's a scripture verse that talks about people ever learning and never coming to a realization of the truth. And so their tool that they're trying to add into their life, education, they're focusing so much on it that education becomes their life. And eventually they're old and gray and they haven't actually used that education to help anyone. And so we want to kind of balance the tools we're putting in our life with the requirement of maintaining those tools, but also actually using them to help people. I mean, what good is a box of tools and wrenches if I never actually help someone? It's just an expenditure that didn't take me anywhere.
How can you maintain a mental tool, though, like a learning tool? Go ahead.
Oftentimes, mental tools are maintained by continual reading and reading important material. For instance, reading Socrates or reading world history, the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. Different things like that we're reading are constantly rejuvenating our mental tools. And of course, just having a simple practice of reading a little bit of the scripture every day. One of the wonderful tools that we have in the Bible itself is the book of Proverbs. That is a book that is absolutely full of mental wisdom of how to live this life better and to find heaven on earth.
I've never actually read all of Proverbs. I got to get to that. It sounds like it's like Socrates or Plato or any of those, like Marcus Aurelius or someone.
It's a remarkably important book, out of all the scripture and all of it. It's hard to say one part's more important than another. But when it comes right down to living life and finding happiness in the world we live in, Proverbs is just about the best book that we have in the scriptures. And of course, that's part of the education. By reading it and taking to heart what it says, we can start applying it. And when we start to apply it, that's where the education becomes a tool that actually helps us attain the heaven that we're looking for.
Plus, if you're not using those tools, other people can't see that those tools even exist. Like if someone doesn't see you using a wrench, like to turn a nut, they won't know how to use a wrench. They're gonna look at the wrench and might think it's like a, I don't know, hammer.
Yeah.
It's very interesting how that works. You got to see people
And
do
of course,
something before you know it.
that's true. One of the important things about education when you're bringing it in combination with tools is oftentimes we're presented problems in life, but we don't know what the right tools are to find a solution for that problem. If you think about today in the news, a lot of people talk about climate change. And so we've got this problem. How big is the problem? Oftentimes people don't know. Even scientists don't always know. How small is the problem? Is it something we need to act on now? Is it something that's never going to really change anything? If we don't have good education, we don't know the tools to solve the problem. And so that's one of the parts that's really important about education. You think about the Sistine Chapel and the huge painting that was done in there. If you don't have the education to know how to paint, how could you duplicate something like the Sistine Chapel? And so there's a lot of things that we need to learn to be able to help people. And so education, I see in my own life when I was young, I wanted to be done with my education as fast as possible. Well, there's, obviously we want to get out and actually do something, and that's important. But education, eventually we have to understand it needs to be a lifelong thing, because we need to keep learning so that we can do more for people and so that we can understand better. A lot of the emotional trauma people go through in life is just simply a lack of understanding about something that they could probably know real easy. And so by educating ourselves and continually looking to educate ourselves, we open up the door to being able to do so much more and know what tools we need or are available for us in the things that we're doing. And so that's an important thing in there. Also, when we start doing that, we start learning about what's required to maintain our own personal well-being.
Right. And that's I think that's your other point. That's your third point. But also with trying to learn all your life, it's very important because with the truth, there's this stepping stone upward, and that's your whole life pretty much. You got to always keep going upward. And if you don't, you're stuck in the middle. You stop learning after college probably, and you're going to be stuck way down here when everyone else is up here. And that's not where you want to be, just because everyone's going to be making fun of you. And you're going to be humiliated. You're going to be very humiliated about it.
Yeah. And so, when we start thinking about personal well-being, when we don't have tools and we don't have education, all we have is stress, because we see problems, but we don't know how to fix them. We don't know what to use to fix them. And so we've got this issue. And, you think about right now, if you get onto Google and look at, especially into young people, one of the main problems today is suicide rates. Well, why are people committing suicide? Because they've got problems and they have no idea what the solutions are. And so if we can help people understand that with the right education and with the right tools, all problems can be solved, that begins to help with our personal well-being. The second side of that, obviously, if we're looking to create a heaven on earth, well, we have to first look here. I mean, if I'm going to create a heaven on earth, I want to live in it as long as possible, which means I have to look at what is important and good for my well-being in this world so that I can keep using the tools and the education that I'm getting and keep doing good. When you have people that their personal well-being begins to deteriorate, they become bitter, they become pessimistic. They can't see the good in life. All they see is the dark clouds. They don't see that there's a silver lining on the clouds. And that's where suicide starts coming into play, or depression, because they've got all these problems and no solutions. And so all of these just have to play together, and they begin to help us develop this heaven on earth.
I actually really like how you put that, just because everything can be fixed, and God made the world so everything can be fixed, and we need to learn those tools and the education and and nowadays so many people aren't finding these tools, and they don't even know that there are tools in the first place, because there's these people that are telling them that there aren't these tools. Like, the government or the colleges that they go to and public schools. Even parents aren't teaching their kids that there are tools and that it's possible to fix everything. Like problems of being lonely or problems of playing too many video games, because video games kind of lead to loneliness and depression. And if you play too much, or there's many things that can lead to all these things, but it kind of bases off knowing that there's tools and that you can be educated to know how to use those tools so that you can have a better life and you can stop being a pathetic person and you can start making a difference in this world. You can start making the world a better place if you know these tools, and well, you can put this well-being into life. You can start making money and being a millionaire at some point, even, because being a millionaire is not a lucky thing. It's a process. It's working at it. It's not some jackpot.
It's a lot of effort.
It's a lot of effort. It's also a lot of effort in being a scribe or writing a book. There's so much effort into all of that.
But really, it doesn't matter whether you're going to write a novel or if you're going to be a millionaire or if you're going to be a top level scientist, a physicist, or whatever it is out there that you might aspire to do to make this world a better place. If you're not doing the effort to get there, you're not very useful. I mean, there are people that go to college, university, they get a degree, but they didn't learn anything. And when they come out, if you ask them, they really can't help you with anything. Well, that's just, it's a flashy covering. It's wonderful to be able to put up on your wall, I'm a doctor of whatever it is. But if I can't help people, what was the point? And everything we're trying to do is to be able to help people and make the world a better place. And of course, that's, part of the fourth part of this step. Sometimes we have to recalibrate. Obviously, if I went to 8 years of university and got a degree and I'm now a doctor, but I can't help people, there's a problem here. There's a disconnect. And so I need to re-examine everything I did and say, okay, where did the disconnect happen? Why is it that I went through all this effort, money, trials, late nights studying, and yet I'm stuck in this place where I can't make the world a better place? Because just because you're a doctor doesn't mean you can make the world a better place. Just because you're a scientist doesn't mean you can make the world a better place. Some do, some don't. Obviously there's names that stand out in history like Einstein or Graham Bell or, many others, famous people who made the world a better place by something that they achieved. But, they were able to take their tools, their education, put these pieces together and, always recalibrate when they made errors. If you think about Tesla and some of the other guys that did wonderful things, sometimes they had to do 100 experiments to get one successful thing. And so each experiment that's a failure requires a recalibration. You've got to relook at what you're doing and try again. That's what we have to do. That's the humility of being a human, knowing that just because we've, done so much already, it doesn't make us perfect. We've got to re-examine things and maybe make another attempt. So if we're living in a depressing state, if we're living in a depressing world, obviously we've failed at making the world a better place. Therefore, we need to re-examine. What am I missing? Am I missing tools? Am I missing education? Am I missing, something in my own personal well-being? Because if I'm not watching my health, number one, health alone can change our chemical balance inside of our body and turn us into a depressed person. And so that's where I need to understand if my chemical balance is off, I have to fix that. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to go forward and help the world become a better place.
Right, and there's so many things to learn, like health and fitness, and because your mental strength and body strength actually are always intermelding, and they always have to be at the same balance, I think. Not always, because like Jordan Peterson isn't a great bodybuilder, but he's great at mental capacity. That's an interesting thought. But so the thought of mental and body strength aren't based off each other, but they both can help each other be better.
Absolutely. And so, when we've got tools and we've got education and we're taking care of our personal well-being and we're always recalibrating, that allows us to make an effort at making the world a better place. And maybe it starts in our own family. Obviously, I'm married. I have a wonderful wife, and of course, I have 6 wonderful kids. Um, one part of that is educating your kids. And if you can educate your kids to be good people, well, you've already done a part of making the world a better place. If you can do your part in providing clean food for the world, you're making the world a better place. I mean, there's so many things today that we need desperately in society: clean food, responsible people, you name it. And on any one of these levels, when we start doing our part, of course, we're affecting things like climate change in a positive way without ever having to make a big deal about it. I mean, if I'm planting a garden and I'm not using chemicals, I'm affecting climate change. And so there's all these little things that we can do that begin to change the world. If I educate my kids in being responsible, don't throw your garbage out the window, put it where it belongs. Each one of these little things, they seem minuscule, but then that goes back to Gandalf's statement. So many people think it's this big, huge thing that we have to do to solve the world's problems. And no, they're just a bunch of little things. And if we all do these little things, the world becomes paradise. And we become wonderful people, and we're living, no matter where we live in this world, we're living exactly where we want to live, and it's a joy to be here in this world. And that's kind of what God put us here. There's a wonderful passage in the Book of Mormon that I really like, and God basically tells us that He made man to have joy. That's what we're shooting for. And so each one of these little things, as we're doing them and becoming responsible, making our bed, cleaning our room, whatever the small act is that we're doing, we're heading towards that goal of joy, where all of us together are now living in this world that's just a thrill to live in. And every day we wake up excited to see what this day has to offer to us. And that feeling is so powerful. You just want to live in it forever. But when we begin to slack off and become lazy, and we're not adding to our toolbox, so to speak, we're not maintaining our education, or we're letting our personal well-being slack by, just eating ramen noodles or chips or whatever, donuts every day, that affects our chemical balance, and we begin to slide. And we're not doing all we can to make the world a better place. And we begin seeing the world, through this dim, dark cloud, and we become depressed, and everything just slides and get worse and worse. That's why it's a constant maintenance. And it's a hard life, but it's the life that God's given us, and we can have a paradise if we want it.
What do you think is the reason why people don't take those steps, like being more healthier in their life and stop eating ramen noodle and donuts all the time? What do you think is the thing that pushes that?
Well, I think, obviously there's some things in our own life which are the addictive personality that we have. We've got chemicals in our body like serotonin, the pleasure chemical and whatnot, where you eat a donut, you get pleasure from it. You get the high from sugar. Sugar is very addictive. And so you have one side of it, which is just the addictive properties of all the nummy things that we like to eat, whatever it is. The other side of that sometimes is we think that leading a good life, a healthy life, requires such a huge effort, we can't do it. And again, this is an education thing, because when we don't have enough education, whatever it is out there seems impossible. Can you invent an airplane? Well, the Wright brothers did. What education did they have? All they were was guys that fixed bicycles. But from that little bit of education, they were able to do a marvelous thing. And that's kind of part of what plays in our own life. When we don't have enough education, we feel like it's impossible to accomplish the things we want to do. And so, health is one of those. Fitness is another thing. if you've done 50 jumping jacks and 50 push-ups or whatever, it might seem like a real challenge to keep doing that every day, or even every other day. And so that challenge becomes a wall to us that inhibits us. And finally, we just give up. Where, with a little bit of knowledge and understanding and a little bit of effort, we can say, wait a minute, I can do this. I can do this all the time. I mean, I think about this in the simple thing of fasting. I mean, I've had a lot of people as a minister have come to me and said they can't fast. It's an impossibility. But it's not really, and this is what I will tell them: just one meal. Just start there. Just one meal. Okay. Can you do one meal? Well, one meal is not too hard. And of course, now if you start doing one meal every other day or one meal every day, pretty soon it's kind of like lifting weights. As you lift weights every day, your muscles build. And as your muscles build, well, you can lift a bigger weight and a heavier weight. And it's the same with everything in life, including education, including the tools that we're getting. As you continue to use these things, it becomes easier for us. We gain a mental strength, a physical strength, and we have more of a determination and an ability to complete what we need to do. And so, as you mentioned early on, the consistency in our life to keep doing these things, and just knowing we can do it. We can do anything we put our minds to. That's the being God created in a human being. We can do anything we put our mind to, creating skyscrapers, space shuttles, whatever it is, down to nanoparticles. We can adjust them. There's nothing we can't do when we put our minds to it, really. We just have to have the determination.
It's actually really building off habits as well, because all of this is what you're putting into your life, what habits you have, because habits are what you do when something comes around. Like having the habit of, when your phone vibrates, what is your reaction? Are you going to pick it up and look at that text message? And then because you looked at that text message, you have this dopamine reaction, and you're going to do it next time and next time and next time. And then you build that habit. But we also got to realize and recalibrate in our lives and realize that that's not good for us. That's actually giving us a addiction of dopamine all the time. It's all these things that we need to look at. Maybe you think they're good, or everyone else around you does them, so why can't you do them and you think they're good as well? But you can actually look into the science of it and see that it is bad for you, and you can see that it is not the right thing to be doing. Maybe when your phone vibrates, you should just not care, or at least not pay as much attention to it. Also, getting up in the morning when your alarm first goes off, not go back to sleep. I do that all the time, though. So I don't know why I'm talking about other people doing it. But I read that I was listening to a book, Atomic Habits, and it's a really, really good book. I highly recommend it. It's why successful people actually become successful. It's because of these tiny little habits in their lives, because atomic means tiny little things that do big impacts in the end. And habits are things that you do all day long, or habits, yes, whatever. But atomic habits are so important because they are they are us. They are who we are. And it's very important to realize them. Most people don't. Most people only realize the big things.
Yep. And of course, again, that goes back to what Gandalf said.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the little things.
It's the little things in life that matter. How do you think all this information can help us figure out what that next step should be?
Well, obviously, again, we need to relook at ourselves and just examine what we're doing. I would think that, especially right now, I mean, when we're recording this, we're still in the middle of the COVID pandemic. Who knows tomorrow what will be the next thing that comes along. But during this period of time, there has been all this social distancing. There's been all this disconnecting from people. And I think that's, something that we're losing that's pretty important that we don't lose. And it may be something so simple as stepping out of your front door and saying hi to your neighbor. asking them how they're doing. They may be in a moment of serious depression, and you just greeting them and saying hi might make the difference for them. And all it takes is a small act of kindness to make the world a little bit better place. And so, to me, that's what it is. It doesn't matter if you're going to be a doctor. It doesn't matter if you're going to be a train engineer. It doesn't matter what you're going to be in life. The purpose of what we're doing is, to make money, to be able to live, to be able to help people. And so whatever it is you want to choose to do, if it's to be a doctor, if it's to be a nurse, if it's to be a teacher, we should always keep the focus in our mind that this is to make the world a better place. It's not just to make money. It's not just to make me rich. Maybe whatever I'm doing will make me money and make me rich, but that can't be the end goal. Because if that's the end goal, when we get there, we'll find that it's not very happy. A lot of rich people in this world that are very unhappy, even rich people who commit suicide. Money doesn't solve their problems. Money doesn't take away the things that they need to know. But if we have the goal in mind to always be making the world a better place, little acts of kindness, whatever it is that we're doing, if we're going to school, reaching out to our classmates, ask them, how you doing? How's your family doing? It seems insignificant, but I tell you what, there's people who their lives have been changed by those little acts of kindness. And so, it's just that act of looking around us and seeing, what can I do? Can I say hi to my neighbor? Can I visit the elderly person down the street? Is there a sister or brother in the church that's sick that I might be able to just give a phone call to and, tell them I'm praying for them? The very act of ringing them up and telling them I'm praying for them may brighten their day. And of course, this is an old thing that we've known for a long time, but one of the best medicines is laughter. And so being able to bring a little bit of cheer to a person's life may help them get on the road to recovery. Because of course, when we are depressed and when we are sick, we can get into this bad loop that actually takes us down to dying, because we feel like we have no chance. Where if someone steps in and gives us a ray of sunlight, a ray of hope, suddenly everything looks better. And so, rather than looking at the world and through the lens of, I want to become a doctor or something like that, if we look at the world through the lens of, I want to make it a better place, what do I like doing? I like fixing cars. Wonderful. I like teaching people. Wonderful. Whatever it is you like doing, then do it, and do it in such a way as to make the world a better place. Find the tools you need to accomplish it. Educate yourself, however, that needs to be, whether it's college, whether it's university, whether it's just reading and studying on your own, because there's a whole lot of personal education a person can do without actually going to a university or college. And so all these efforts to make yourself a better person allow you then to do wonderful things in this world. And then rather than setting your goals humongous to where you don't feel like you'll ever be able to finish them or do them, just make small goals. I'm just going to do a little bit today. I'm going to clean my room. I'm going to clean my house. I'm going to help the neighbor. I'm going to make sure that I go to church on time. And I'm going to make sure that I'm going frequently. When we start having those small goals, they amount to together humongous things. And, before we know it, we know we're going in the right direction, because more people around us have smiles. More people around us are finding happiness. We're helping people around us, and that's the right direction to go. You can't say becoming a doctor is the right direction, because a lot of people never become a doctor. But if whatever they're doing is bringing a little bit more kindness and a little bit more cheer, a little bit more love into the world, helping out their neighbors, then whatever it is that they're doing is helping the world become a better place.
I think that would actually make a heaven on earth, pretty much, just because everyone's working together and everyone's being kind to each other and everyone is respecting each other and giving each other rights and not infringing on each other and just being helpful to each other as well. And also thinking about being a doctor and putting it in a small scale, you can actually think about taking that next class and remembering how to actually do CPR. That's a one, but that's a little thing that you can actually help people with, which if you put it into the perspective of trying to make this world a better place, that is making the world a better place, because you're being what you are, what your job is. If you're going to be a doctor, you're learning it. So you can actually, when you go to college or when you go to learn some skill, you can think of those little steps and those little things that will make the world a better place, even though they don't seem like it's going to make the world a better place, which I think that's just awesome. We don't actually need to worry about those big steps then. We need to worry about those small steps.
And so there's some simple thoughts just to kind of maybe write down or take notes on. Number one, simple thought, money will never solve your real problems. Money will never solve your real problems. Number two, pace yourself. If you just pace yourself in life, you'll find that all good things come to them who persevere in a good direction. Number three, your health is a very valuable asset, and you need to take care of it. You need to maintain it. You need to know about it. We are a working machine, and we need to know what's the right fuel to put in, what are the right things that we should be doing so that this machine can work optimally for a lifetime. Number four, you can't always have what you want. And if we remember that, we'll be happier in life. We can't always have what we want. A lot of things we might want that might not be an option. Number five, it's not all about me. And sometimes we get hung up on that. We see people talking or whatever and looking at us and we think, well, they're talking about me. They're gossiping about me. And we suddenly want to make everything in life about me. It's not all about you. There's a whole lot bigger world out there than just you, so to speak. Number six, there's no shame in not knowing. There's only shame in not wanting to know. And that's important to remember. A lot of things we don't know. And that goes with our tools and our education and all that. That's okay to not know. But if you refuse to learn, then you can't ever make the world a better place. And so we have to be willing to constantly learn. We have to be willing to say, I just don't know. Because then we can move on. Number seven, love is more than a feeling. It's a choice. And we can't forget that in our tools of making the world a better place. It's not going to become easy to love everyone around us. We're going to have people at our place of business, our work, where we go to school, wherever it is. There's always going to be someone who grates on our nerves. There's always going to be someone who infuriates us. Love is a choice. It doesn't always come easy. Number eight, make sure you appreciate what you have. Oftentimes, all we can think about is what we want. But if we just stop and appreciate what we have, we're already on the road to making the world a better place. Number nine, don't flirt with the world. And what I mean when I say don't flirt with the world, there's a lot of bad things, drugs, alcoholism, all those things, pornography, homosexuality, whatever it is out there, the extremes, whatever we view the extremes of sin, don't flirt with it. Because too many of those things, once you try them once, you can't hardly get it out of your life, no matter how hard you try. There are drug rehabilitation centers with people in there who can't get those drugs out of their life. And so it's better never to flirt with it. Keep your distance. You will be happier. Those things are not going to add to you anyway. And so if we just don't flirt with the world and we concentrate on making things better, we will find that we'll avoid a lot of the heartaches and pains that some people go through. There's a statement that someone made that I really like. Sin will keep you longer than you want to stay and cost you more than you want to pay. And that's a pretty profound statement. And a lot of people don't understand that. But, if you just apply that to drug addiction as a sin, you're stuck in it. You want out, but you can't get out. And it costs you your mental health, your physical health, everything. And it's not something that you can just easily gain back. And, this is even true in something so simple as the addiction of cigarettes. A lot of people say, well, cigarettes aren't so bad, or marijuana's not so bad. No, every one of them is going to cost you, and they're going to keep you longer than you want to stay. And the day you want to get out of it, it's going to be like, a lot of people who smoke tell me, I can leave this anytime I want. No, it's not true. Most people cannot just leave those addictions. The sin has them, and that's how you know what it is. And so, sin will keep you longer than you want to stay and cost you more than you're willing to pay. And that's something that we need to remember. One thing, number 10 on my list that I have here, if you have a choice between being liked or respected, choose respect. It's far more valuable. And of course, that's part of making the world a better place also. Number 11, obviously, we've talked about this, and well-being. Take responsibility for yourself. And that's part of making the world a better place. There's a lot of people in this world that want everyone else to be responsible for them. Take responsibility for yourself. You've now made the world a better place. Number 12, say I'm sorry. Being humble enough to admit when we've done wrong is another part of making the world a better place. And, when we do that and also learn from the mistakes we make and learn from the mistakes that others make, this is all part of that whole circle of education, the tools that we need, and recalibrating. And if we just follow those simple principles, like I said, we will find very short order, this world is a whole lot better than we thought it was.
Those are actually really good points. I love them all. I'm going to have to write them all down, listen to the podcast again, write them all down. That's really good. Do you have any other points to add?
That's basically what I have in my notes.
I think we figured out how we can take the better next step, how we can figure out how to take the next step. It's just doing the small little steps one at a time, and just, they're going to reach to a big goal at some point, no matter what. All right, then this is the end of the podcast. And truth seekers, keep being truth seekers and keep seeking truth. You will make the world a better place and make everyone's life easier that way.
Take care.